Well, I got out of the military in '63, came to work in Dallas. I worked for a private investigating company for a while, and I thought I was worth more than he did, so I went to work for Greenville Avenue Patrol for a while. And, that wound up being a 7-day, 12-hour day job, and a little more than I wanted to work. And somebody told me they had an opening in Carrollton Police Department, and I came up and applied and got the job. Almost didn't take it because Carrollton was so small, and, there wasn't much here. I think they had like 9 officers and a little tiny hole in the wall for a station over, because at that time the fire station, the city hall, and the police station was all in that one little building. And anyway, I came and we worked 6 days a week at that time. We worked all the football games and that stuff extra with no additional pay. We did all the reports after we got off work with no additional pay, that type of thing. Well, we closed at 11 o'clock, and we had 2 people on the street. When I came here, they had assistant chief and myself worked late nights, and they later, he got involved in several accidents over on the late night shift, and they finally demoted him back to patrolman. And he later went to work for the county for the last several years of his life. Oh, I think it was pretty well, it was a little country town back then. It was pretty well isolated by itself. And I hadn't been here about 3 or 4 days when the Blackton Grain blew up down there.
What did?
The Blackton Granary had that explosion in it. Well, from all the dust and stuff in there. And burned a guy real bad. In fact, I still see him around sometime. He got burns on real bad. Well, we had the high waters in '64. You get out on Dixon Road in that area, water was up to almost the mailboxes. And you got on, even on Trinity Mills, some of them guys were standing up on beds, and we had trouble tearing up radiators in those cars trying to get through the water during that time.
How long were you on the force?
Almost 27 years. When I came here, like I said, we had that little tiny hole in the wall, had a little holding cell that you could put 1 or 2 people in. I don't think they'd even sit down unless you put a chair in there. And, the chief and the dispatch and the officers all worked out of this one little room when I first came. They later built City Hall next door, so we got half of the old building. I think it was '67 they built the fire station over on Beltline, and we got the rest of the building. And that worked out pretty good for us because it gave us pretty good room. We still had the old water cooler stuff that broke every once in a while in the old building. But, technology and facilities and a lot of things changed, because when I first came to Carrollton, we didn't have air conditioning patrol cars. And we later got they did add-on air conditioners, I don't know, 6 months or a year or something after I was here. Back in those years, we were having, some teenage suicides and, and particularly going out in vehicles and running exhaust pipes up in cars out in field stuff. We had too much of that. We had quite a few drownings out on the river. Of course, the river wasn't our city limits, but we made all the calls out there because we were the first responders. And, we had school burglars and residential burglars and business burglars, the normal stuff, car thefts here and there. We had some little, over off of West College and that area, we had a lot of people come in on weekends, and they'd have those parties, and they'd have stabbings and stuff over there, and you'd get drinking, and stuff, and get a little out of control. I was an investigator during those years, and I know one time we got just a phone number of a friend of the person that had an abortion in Austin. Me and Bill Fuller went down there and got Austin Police Department, and we found the lady. And we later went and got her and brought her back to Dallas, and she testified in the grand jury, and they indicted him on that one. And I don't think that one ever went to trial. And I'm thinking we filed another one. And the one that went to the Supreme Court was a little lady out of Fort Worth. I got a call on that. She was in the hospital from the mother. And it was, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks before we got a chance to interview her. And I think it was, I wrote on the paper when we went and interviewed her. I went back in my daytime log from the old daytimes I had from back those days and looked it up. It was, I'm thinking June the 15th, 1969 that we interviewed her. She had had the abortion, and she got bleeding real bad, and she couldn't get a hold of the doctor. And she went to the hospital at Fort Worth and was treated by 2 or 3 doctors in the hospital, and was several days in the hospital in Fort Worth. And she was very upset because he didn't treat her. So we went and interviewed with her, and she met us down to the grand jury and testified, and they got an indictment. And we arrested the doctor again and took him to the county. And that one went to the Supreme Court. And that's what changed Roe versus Wade. See, abortion was illegal in Texas for many, many years. And when the Supreme Court made the ruling, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years after the case was filed, it was permissible for women to be able to get abortion legal. Well, of course, the last 10 or 12 years I worked mostly inside administration, and I mostly just went out on major calls for, duty officer calls and that type of thing, because I was working inside and taking care of details and budget and finances and buildings and whatever. Back when I first come here, the Blantons and the Smiths and, those people were pretty powerful people. The Turners, because, they were the old-timers. And the Graveleys, that was still part of the old original group. Because, we still had mostly raw land. Because when I first came to Carrollton, see, the milk carriers on the rural areas like Dixon Road, Trinity Mills, and Sandy Lake Road was Route 1, Box whatever, Carrollton. Went out to about Moore Road, which was Carrollton mail addresses. John Julian had that cotton farm there on Beltline Josie all the way up to about Marsh. And, of course, all the field, there was a little gas station in the house on the corner there. And the only thing out there, I believe, was Ford Motor Company came in later. Otis was out there. And I think maybe the Inland Container, that's really about the only thing between there and Marsh. One time I found a truck driver dead at Marsh and Beltline, because back years ago, Marsh Lane come up and hit Beltline, and it zigzagged and come back up. And this truck driver come there, and it was loaded with steel going to that rebar place out there on John Conley. And he marred up in that mud, and that steel came through him through the truck. So he just blew when I found him. They had the steakhouse down there, and that was probably pretty big hangout. Run by Lucille Young. They had the little coffee, I think what they call coffee shop. That probably would set 8 or 10 people in it, very small. The Rainbow Drug. Then you had Cold Dairy Mart on Josie at Beltline there, but where the Firestone store is now, it was almost like a Dairy Queen. And Mr. Cole fed all the Turner football stadium guys when they played football on Friday night steaks to keep them up so they play good. The A&P was at Beltline Josie when I came here. They had that little strip in there. And, well, it came, don't remember exactly how far it came out. Bradford's drugstore was there, and I think another drugstore right there in the corner. They later come down and moved A&P over to where the Fiesta is now. And Bradford drugstore caught on fire one night, and I pulled up there about midnight and didn't see no lights on. Went up there, put my hands on the window to look in, almost got burned off that hot glass. Well, Trinity Mills was always a problem because, every time it rained, it flooded out there. We also got people running that water and get stuck, and we'd have to go fish them out and, whatever. One time we got one out of a tree out there.
Because of the rain?
Yeah, he drove in there and got on top of a car and finally got over into a tree, and somebody saw him and called us 2 o'clock in the morning. We went down and got him out of the tree. You know, in those days, we knew everybody, knew where they lived, pretty well knew when they come and went, and that type of thing. And, you know, if you got a call, you knew which quickest way to get there and that type of thing. You know, like Jackson Road, McCoy, and Trinity Mills and all that were dirt, Nix Road and all that. And if it rained, you just didn't drive down them, you got stuck. Telephones. We had 2 telephone systems out here. One was a Chapel 2, which was a 242 that you have now. And with the 242, I think you could call the local areas around here. But usually, like the police station and businesses pretty much had the 242 numbers or Chapel 2. And we had a Congress 9 number. And you couldn't even call Coppell on it without being long distance. We could call Carrollton, Hebron, Addison, and Farmers Branch, I believe, was all you could call on it. And a couple, 3 years later, they came in and put in Chapel 2 or 242 numbers for everybody. We got a teletype machine after I came here, and I think it typed 300 bits a minute. In order for it to do that, you had to sit there and type a keyboard out, and it printed a tape. And you put this tape in this machine, and it went to Garland DPS. And I think from Garland DPS, it went from there to Waco DPS, and from Waco to Austin. And it took you about 2 or 3 days to get an answer back. Today, when I left over, they had the NCIC machine was returns in, I think, about 9 seconds. So it's quite a change. It got real busy about 2 o'clock in the morning because Houston put all our stolen cars out on the thing. And at Carrollton, the dispatch had to take and log all these cars on an index card. So if we checked on a car, we checked those index cards, because the only other source we had was called Dallas Sheriff's Department and get them to check something for them. And I'm not sure how great their system was, but they had better than we did. And, you know, we had one frequency to most places out here, the old 37180 system, and, you know, us and Waxahachie and all the other local departments was on that one frequency. And if the weather got bad, Cleveland, Ohio would come in off real bad, and you couldn't hardly hear on it. Well, the Josie Ranch was out there, but see, they quit having the rodeos before I came here. I understand back in the early days they had a lot of rodeo stuff. Sometimes we had to stop and let the peacocks run across the road before you could drive through. From what I understand, when I first came here, there was a little house over on Jackson Road on top of the hill over about where the fire station is now. One of the work hands lived over there. Mr. Newt lived in the little house where the big house was, where they got the senior living center now. And Mr. Johnson, who was another employee, lived on top of the hill in Killer Springs, there where the apartments are now. And of course, you know, they were very wealthy people. They run Longhorns out here. And from what I understand, at that time, they were paying Mr. Newt like $800 a month, giving him a house, giving him a car, buying his clothes, and buying his food, when most other people was making probably $300 a month. And they owned from Rancho Oil Company, I believe. And I understand they had 3 or 4 floors of the major hotels leased down Dallas to run their operation out of. And rumor was that one of them was worth $52 million or something, the other was worth $56 million. And they used to have the parties over in the old house in Josie Ranch there. You know, all those apartments and houses are in Jackson and Josie down there. See, all that was part of the old Josie Range. Then when you got on over in Scotts Mill, you had the Maxville Range. Then if you went up a little bit more on Scotts Mill, you had the Hughes Eggs Farm. We got this call that this guy had, I think it had been called back to work and hadn't gone back to work. And we went over and found him in the bedroom of the house. Of course, the odor was terrible. and he had a rifle laying on the bed and had this lawnmower in the room. And we couldn't figure out what that lawnmower was doing in the room. And we got looking around. He had all the doors and the vents and stuff taped up, and the lawnmower was out of gas. So he had put a choke on that lawnmower, let it run in the bedroom till he died. We had a ball burning thing from the Turner High School one time over there. It went over pretty smooth. You know, we kind of sat back and in the background, kind of let them run, and it came out okay. Well, it's kind of like when they had that hippie festival here in Louisville that time at the racetrack. Remember that? You know, everybody talked about all the problems with it. You know, we arrested several local people for drunk, but we got very few out-of-town people. The police chief in Louisville got in big trouble because they stole 5 or 6 cars during that time from Louisville, and he got up there and welcomed them back, and that didn't go good.